Just a little bit on me. I've been in digital, you can tell, far too long. I'm only 18 really, so it's been weighing heavily on me for a period of time. But no, in all seriousness, I've been working in digital 25 years, something like that. Started off in the internet pioneers, places like AOL and FreeServe. I've been a consultant or an executional consultant for the last 15 years or so. Utilising digital to affect positive change within organisations. I look after Digital Works Group's optimisation and delivery team. What that broadly means, it's the product function, it's the project function, the technology function, and also the marketing function. And please pick me up on this. If I speak too much in too many acronyms, please tell me off. As an organisation, we like to speak quite cleanly and quite clearly about what these topics are. And optimisation delivery is pretty much what we call execute and grow. Okay. Previous webinar, which was conducted by Richard. Richard is head of our strategy and leadership team, which is our think type of area. So we are very much as a business a think, execute and grow type of philosophy. Enough about me. So what we're going to talk about today, I think there might be a poll come out as well, just to get your input in terms of what you want to focus on really. But we're going to set a little bit of context in terms of what is happening in the world around with this thing called digital. What that actually then leads on to is common states that businesses, doesn't matter if they're B2B or B2C, what they're currently finding themselves in, what states. Then we're going to talk about the digital evolution curve, which is front and center in this particular webinar. It's a really simple method or an approach to give it I guess, a direction for what you need to do in your digital transformation activities. And we find it's a really useful thing broadly to take a complex topic at times and make it simple and make sense of it. We're going to, all the way through that, give some examples, obviously, of organisations who have been through these particular stages, in these cases successfully. Maybe in another session, we'll talk about companies who haven't been quite successful and what the learnings from there are. And then we're going to talk about very quickly about the next steps on, because this is actually part of a methodology we use around business transformation or digital transformation when we're assisting businesses. And although we've got a Q&A session at the end of that, I encourage everybody to ask questions along the way. What we're going to maximise on in this particular poll, I've now got that through. We are going to interject this with people's experiences of what they've worked. And as I say, we've got some case studies that we can verbally take you through on that. Okay, next on. So let's talk a little bit about the impact of digital on businesses today. Now, if you had the previous webinar, Richard took us through this. So for those who don't, or haven't been through it, I'll take you through it very quickly. Most fundamental thing is customers have changed very significantly, okay? From what we would call the pre-digital, the analog age, if you want to call it that, us as customers or consumers have changed our characteristics dramatically. Okay? That's changing how we do things. It's changing how we act, our behaviours and everything else. And pretty much that's because we're now massive consumers of information. We've also got an enormous amount of choices, okay? The flood of the ability to acquire or buy stuff or subscribe to stuff in a digital way has grown exponentially. So there's a brilliant amount of choice. It's also extraordinarily, it's also extraordinarily transparent. We're allowed to move between things very quickly as well. And finally, we can talk back to things. Okay, we have the ability to share poor experiences really quickly. So us as consumers, what that broadly means is we're very discerning, we're very empowered, and we're very impatient. Things have to be incredibly tailored to what we're doing. We've also got this more choice as ever, as I said. So, you know, very transparently, I can go to competitors if I don't want to do that. And secondly, I can be very vociferous in that particular regard. So a little bit of fun, as Claire has highlighted here. According to estimated global statistics, what's the amount of people online or have got access to the internet and do that? Most majority here has actually gone for 65%. Actually, it's not quite as high as that, it's 55%, but it's still significant in that particular regard. So, moving on. Hopefully. So you can look at your own examples in here, but pretty much the rate of change is accelerating. So it's all getting faster. Businesses have to adapt even more faster. So let me take one at random, one of my favorite ones. So let's have a look at what was happening in 2016. On YouTube, 2.78 million video views. 2019, that's almost doubled in that period of time. Okay, so us as consumers are also consuming far more. We're consuming stuff in an ever-accelerating rate. We're moving more and more towards a digital environment. And it's, as I say, that rate of acceleration is just exponentially growing. Fortunately, for a lot of existing businesses, obviously traditional barriers to entry are pretty much gone now. Okay, and actually, there's new that nobody's really safe from disruption. So if we look at this lot, there's a bunch of new companies who are pretty well known now, albeit if you went back only 5 years ago, some of these you wouldn't have heard of unless you were in the industry. So, you know, very established names like Uber or Airbnb or Deliveroo or things like that, they've been really disrupted and they've grown exceptionally fast. The downside is a lot of established businesses have actually started to go to the wall. They just haven't adapted quickly enough. And actually that's a core message that I think is coming through from what's happening in the market. You have to set yourself up to transform and you need to work out how to do it. Because if you don't do it, you go the way of the dodo. That's not pleasant for anybody along the way. Final thing, so we won't bore you too much with this. The environment is getting much more complex. There was a study done by McKinsey probably a couple of years ago now, which focused on the buy cycle. And the customer buy cycle has become much more complex. And that's a function of us having more information, we're being more discerning. What does that mean? So in the past, before I bought something, let's say it was an expensive thing that I was going to spend a bit of time and effort researching, I probably would have gone through 5 or 6 validation points in the way that which would make my mind up in terms of whether I'm going to buy it or not. It's now 20 plus. So if you want to be effective of ensuring that customers come on board with you, you've got to influence them through that 20 buy cycle process. So it's more complex in the way that's operating. So us as consumers, more demanding, more empowered, more complex in that particular regard. Also when you're trying to execute these type of things, okay, the vendor universe, or is also very much more complex. So making choices around technology and other bits and pieces such as this, okay. So if you look at that particular slide in the middle, which is to do with the MarTech universe, for example, it was pretty complex in 2011. It was just unbelievably complex now in 2017. Final thing as well, obviously, the various degrees of technology have become more complex over that period of time. There's new stuff at least. So from machine learning to blockchain to AI to all of those things, which applied correctly have fantastic benefits to organizations. But obviously it's a complex thing to understand the technology and what the benefits are and how you move that aspect forward in that particular regard. So what we've got here, we've got a question here. How at risk is your business from digital disruption? A lot of people, it's interesting here, green, at low risk, well prepared and leading innovation. That's fantastic to hear. Others not quite so prepared along that particular regard. So I think there may be some degree of resonance in what we're going to be talking about today. So enough of the market and setting up the context of what we're doing. Let's now talk about common states businesses are currently finding themselves in. So broadly, they're in three states. Firstly, there are companies obviously that have reacted too slowly. We saw those in the ones who've gone the way of the dodo, and there's quite a lot of companies who are still in that. And broadly, they need to turn around very rapidly. The second thing is those companies who are seeing it, and actually a number of people on the line here today are in that state according to that poll we've just seen, okay? And they're in that nice state whereby it probably is a need to move, but there is at least a planned transformation approach. There is time to be able to move it. They're probably out in the market in the third state, very few of these actually, where companies have done all of the hard yards in terms of digital transformation activity. And what they're broadly now at is in a really good position to what I call game-changing innovation, okay? There's not many of those, but there are. That's a recognized bucket for those people who have gone through successful transformation and can now start moving in that particular regard. So we're going to use that to frame some of this stuff. We're going to talk around about the digital evolution curve, okay? But it's typically more applicable for organizations which are in either a rapid turnaround, you need to move through it quickly, or alternatively those who are in a transformation state. Innovation companies pretty much have got to that stage 3, and we'll talk about that now. Sophie, is there any questions I'm missing along the way at the moment?
We haven't had anything come through as yet, Andrew, but yes, to everyone, if you do have a question, please don't be shy, post it as you go.
Fantastic. Yeah, please do. Please do so. And so please jump in if I'm talking too much, which is...
I will do.
All right, no worries at all. So what I think is common, obviously, for that is for organisations, especially in those first 2 states, okay, is a requirement to have a structured approach to help with that. Digital is really complicated. I feel very... what's the right word? I feel very sorry, actually, for CEOs along the way who have to deal with transforming their businesses because it is very complex. I can imagine the times, because I've been in them, these discussions which go through, you have HRDs talking about employee value propositions and how digital can help with that. You have clearly chief marketing officers talking about, look, it's to do with digital marketing, we need to do this activity. You have chief operating officers who are talking about, well, actually, here is some opportunities we've got to digitize our operational processes, okay, and make it become more efficient and do these types of things. And those conversations can continue, especially when the CTO or CIO comes in and says, well, it's all of those things, guys. We have to do all of those things. The technology and the data is moving. Now, for the CEO, especially for those who are very early stage in their transformation journey, their challenge is actually creating a way to actually ensure the journey, it goes in the right direction, continues to build momentum, but also, secondly, do the right things at the right point in time to get benefit, okay? And that's a really critical thing. And often that just takes a bit of experience in the way to actually think about this quite clearly. So just a quick element to talk about where people are in this particular regard. Obviously, some people are in turnaround. You know, it can be done. Is the good news for that, especially if you follow a structured approach. Not only in some of the stuff we're going to be talking about today. For those who are at the transformational stage, which I think is the majority, this could be very useful in what we're going to be walking into. The innovation stage, I think this is going to be probably less useful for you, but we are going to be talking about, in the blueprint stage, just some way to control innovation and the way to think about that. So it might be worthwhile hanging around for that type of thing. So hopefully that'll be useful. So what I'm now going to talk about is the main event really, Digital Evolution Curve, which is a simplified way of thinking about how to create a direction of travel for your transformation of your business, which also builds momentum. It stops you boiling the ocean. Don't do that, because that will fail. Break it up into manageable chunks which build upon each other. At that point, you walk through to what we call the magical land, which is this innovation state. We'll talk about that a bit more now. So, this is part of a 4-step methodology that we often use with senior teams, typically around transformation, also around turnaround. Turnaround, you only have to do it quicker. I think the most of it already, but that is the pace, which is just the difference rather than the approach. The first thing we generally do is we talk about the educational bit. So we touched on that already today. Then we talk around, as I said, this concept around the digital evolution curve, which we'll get into, which is about giving a direction of travel. Then we talk about blueprints, which are proven approaches at each stage of your evolution, at each area of your business. So you become very clear in what you need to do at each stage. So you're de-risking it. So if your direction of travel is de-risking, putting a vision and a strategy together and an achievable route, your blueprints are giving you certainty about what you need to do at that particular point in time. The final thing, which is a change framework, is when you know where you're going and know what you need to do, you then got to start thinking about what you need within your organization to make the change smoother and faster. And that allows you to speed stuff up. So all of this kind of approach is de-risking your journey, making it more certain that you're going to be successful of actually embracing digital appropriately within your organization. What that broadly means is you're adapting to the market and you're using digital within your organization to broadly get benefit and take advantage. Digitization of operational processes could be a good example of that. But the final stage is what capabilities you need to start building in your organization to make that change smoother and faster. Now, I'm not going to talk about that today. That's going to be followed up in some of the other webinar sessions that we've got coming up. I'd really recommend doing that because, as I say, if you know where you're going, that's great. If you know what you've got to do, that's great. But you also need to ensure that you can do it smoothly and fastly. And we've got a nine change framework which will talk to that in that particular regard. And we find that that works very well for people going through change. Anyway, let's talk about the digital evolution curve. So what is it? Okay. Said about this already. It's a simple way of providing companies with a direction for their transformation activities. Okay? And also knowledge of what to do and help the state that they're in. Okay? Now, what isn't on this particular slide is the red bit, which is actually stage 0. Okay? Stage 1 is broadly talking about marketing transformation and the benefits you get around revenue and reach. Stage 2 is what we call the full 9 yards. It's proper company transformation across your business, typically triggered by an understanding that you need to change to an omni-channel, end-to-end customer experience, which is a benefit to your customers and also to your company. Okay, talk about that in a bit more. And stage 3 is you've done all the 9 yards, you've got the right environments to do game-changing innovation. Now, also what isn't on this slide itself is the fact that we've a little bit of research in terms of where most companies fit on that curve. Okay, digital transformation is really early stages. It's still, although I've been doing it for 20 odd years, okay, it's actually, for most organizations, it's an immature activity. So 40% of companies in the UK are probably still at stage 0. Okay, it's really nascent. Wait a minute. It's really nascent for those organizations that have a rudimentary website or something like that. About 35% of companies are going through stage 1 at the moment, which is marketing transformation. That's bolting on SEO, PPC, blah, 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 onto their go-to-market approaches. About 15% of companies are at stage 2, so they're going through the full 9 yards. More, let's say, the more close to the consumer that you are, probably the more pressure you're moving through in that particular regard. So you see more B2C companies further along from perhaps B2B, just as an observation, really. Stage 3, which is your innovation environment, you broadly at that particular point in time get about 5% of companies, and that splits into established corporates, but very disruptive entrepreneurial-based businesses are at that stage 3 at that particular point. Just have a look at the poll where people think they are. Actually, interesting to see in our audience that there are some people at stage 0, but not quite as much as I was saying. More at the marketing stage. Not so many going through the full company digital transformation, but great to see a number of our audience who are clearly at the end stage, that innovation stage. Well done for getting there. It's quite a journey to get there, and it's a massive achievement to be able to do so. So well done on that. So, benefits of the approach itself, just here, it's simple to understand. If you do it in the right order, brings benefits quickly. Allows you, because it's additive, allows you, and you don't bite off too much to start with, builds momentum in that particular regard. Most importantly, I think along the way, it builds the foundations for a successful next stage. Okay, so what does that all mean? Let's talk about stage 1, which is your digital marketing transformation. Okay, what benefits you get out of it? You get better at reach and revenue, okay, because your customers have changed, and you're actually going to be better at reaching them, and you're going to be better at converting them. Okay, so what does that generally mean for most organisations? Okay, so it's putting digital marketing into your traditional marketing approaches. You start to add on things like PPC, SEO, digital advertising, remarketing, if you have the capabilities to do that. Okay, so you move into a multi-channel communication environment, which improves your acquisition and your retention. That increases your revenue. So you get better at marketing in that particular regard. What you're generally doing, you're either creating or improving or optimizing your existing digital assets, so your website, your apps, or whatever it is. Maybe you're moving them into a design responsive way, so you're doing those in a not only a multi-channel way, but you're also doing it in an efficient way. But really, really critically, because this is the main lever here from a business model perspective, you're cranking the lever to increase that conversion rate, and that's really, really important. That adds the value in this particular regard. You're hopefully starting to improve the relationship, because you understand that technology is really important to enable this. So it's not OPEX driven, it's a CAPEX driven environment. And what you broadly do here is you start to improve the relationship between marketing and technology, so they work together really well. Probably a lot of people on the line have heard about things like agile methodologies and things like that, which just increase the speed of your creation, which matches the market demands moving forward. Okay, that's really important to do so. And you know, it's a planned agile approach that increases your speed. So there's always an investment at that particular stage, and that will just continue through all of the stages moving forward. A really important thing as well for stage 3, when you're creating game-changing innovation activities. What you're generally going to be doing as well, because you want this to be as automated as possible, so it's OPEX orientated, it's CAPEX orientated, so it starts to improve your cost base as well, is that you start to improve your marketing stack, okay? So the way that you get your ECRM talking is to influence that buy cycle of customers and other aspects such as that. You start to suck a little bit of insight out of your data lakes and start to move in that particular regard as well. And that just improves your efficiencies and your speed of being able to service stuff. Final thing of that element is you start to change your organizational structure. So it's very easy when you first start, I guess, to ask agencies to help you out. But if it's absolutely critical to what you're doing, and digital is, it's something you need to own within your business. That might seem a strange thing for a consultancy broadly to tell organizations, but we do it all the time actually, is that you need to start having your own capabilities in-house to control what you're doing, okay? So take an example, okay? Say I started off, I've started off and I thought, right, I'm going to go to an agency to create my website. I'm going to go to another agency to do my PPC. I'm going to do another one, which is SEO. I'm going to do some digital advertising with another agency. You can't from a customer experience or a company benefit experience, sew it together properly. Okay, if you've got teams internally who may work with other agencies from a subject matter expertise perspective, you can control it. Okay, so we often say, start planning to bring more of your stuff in-house. You're going to start swelling within your marketing team your digital capabilities in-house, okay? And you, at the same time, you're going to train them to work better with your technology department so you can speed all this stuff up, okay? That's really important. So you start to get this virtuous circle of having the right environment, the right building blocks, the right stuff to actually go to the market in the right way and start converting better and reaching more people in a more effective and more cost-effective way, because you're starting at that front end of the buy cycle. You're starting to acquire companies better. Customers better. Final thing you probably do is start to inject data analytics capability so you continuously improve. Okay, so this insight starts to come in. You understand how actually I change these elements. I do a bit of multivariate or A/B testing on my website. How I can improve upon that, and then suddenly you've got this momentum that's building. You've then got a very happy chief financial officer, because and a CEO or whoever, who then says, do you know what? It was a task to do, and we've done it, and we've invested in it. But fundamentally, we now can see we are getting improvements about revenue and reach. Okay, so you've got the start of a building block, and you've created success as a momentum in your journey. Really, really important, especially for the next bit. So, what's an example of a, yes?
Andrew, sorry to interrupt. We've just had a question come in, which is a good one, and other people may find this interesting. So the question is, would you recommend working on more than one stage at a time?
Oh, that's a really good question, actually. I think it depends upon the context, okay? So if I'm in a turnaround situation, you might have to work on the stages in parallel. Okay. If you have more time, my advice, my general advice, is to work it in a as discreet a way as you can. Because as I say, what you're generally trying to do is build momentum and show success. There is nothing better when you're changing to demonstrate success. Okay, and if so, don't boil the ocean straight away, because that can be quite problematical. Okay, but fundamentally, if you have the time, try and do it as discreetly as possible, because the next stage on, you're going to be doing more stuff. Okay, you start with marketing. My only caveat to that is if you are in a turnaround and you don't have time to do this type of thing. At that particular point, you need to have very rigid controls in your change. You might have to do things in what we would generally call it a more boil the ocean, or just a bigger amount of activity in that particular regard. But you can still do it. You just need to be very, you've got to be very clear on what you need to do and parallel path it. That question is determined really by the time you've got to do the activity. Because ideally, you do it, you build the building blocks, and you move on to the next stage. Hopefully that helps in that way. Okay, Sophie, was that okay?
Yeah, that's good. And we're about halfway through the webinar now. Just
perfect. I think I'm on track.
Good.
Okay. So early on, Cole said, "What's some examples of this?" I can't talk about names because in places, obviously, some of this touches on NDAs that we're still under. But a very well-known hospitality company went through this particular stage. We helped them through that over a period of about, actually, in this case, about 18 months or so. They are now moving into stage 2, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But fundamentally, they went through this activity in a very structured way. So they expanded their digital team. So when we first arrived, just to give some context, they were turning over about £700 million. 80% of that was going through digital channels. They had a team of about 6 to 7 people who were supporting it. They were working with a multitude of digital agencies along the way. They're very fortunate. They still have a very good conversion rate, but the experience that they had, quite an old website they had at that particular point, was quite rigid. It was difficult to change, and also I'm sure they will forgive me saying probably the worst mobile application I've ever seen in my life, actually, at that particular point in time. But they went on quite a structured approach. They swelled the team up from 6 who were really good people, actually, just completely overworked, to about 20 odds or so. We helped them with the structure of that particular department, injecting some capabilities underneath all this to facilitate it. Digital product team, digital marketing team, digital analytics team, and a couple of other things as well. It swelled up in that particular regard. They took control. And they had, a marketing budget of many millions of pounds. And the CEO, quite rightly, actually, was somewhat concerned that he wasn't getting quite the right return on investment that he wanted, and he wanted to make it more efficient. And actually, by taking control in-house, by sewing it up together in that PPC and SEO experience, they broadly achieved it. And over that 18 months to 2-year period, that revenue went from 700 million to just over $1 billion in terms of it. Now, there are obviously other factors which are appropriate to that, but digital share of that didn't drop at all. It just continued to do what it was doing. In fact, it became more and more important as their customers took digital or that digital acquisition channel as their preferred route to market. And there was improvements to the website that they did, and that increased conversion only a bit, but again, it made massive differences in terms of that revenue. So they went through that journey, and actually, I'm always delighted to see it in the way that they react, because I remember when I first was there, they were doing some outbound CRM marketing, and they used to do 4 emails a month to the complete base that they've done. And if I'm honest with you, it was rubbish, because it was completely irrelevant information which was coming. It wasn't relevant for me when I achieved it or anything like that. Now, showing a little bit of loyalty, I guess, because I think they've got an exceptionally good proposition into the market. I still go and stay in this particular environment. And they send me really good communications on my visit. They completely understand the buying cycle there. So before I arrive, they talk to me about, oh, don't forget you're turning up, hope you have a good experience. When I'm there, things to do and everything like that. And when I've gone, what's your experience and all these things? It's fundamentally changed the experience, and it's just reinforcing in that particular regard. And they've invested not only in their team, but clearly in their marketing technology stack to match my expectations or exceed them in terms of not only my first visit, but subsequent visits. And that's been really important for them. Plus, they've built the foundations for the future moving forward. And as I say, they're now into the next stage on, which is stage 2. And this is a much more fundamental transformation. So a really good example of an organization. Took some time, really focused on it. They clearly invested. They got a massive return. Honestly, that 300 million is tenfold what the investment, more than tenfold what the investment of the original cost was to actually achieve it. So that's stage 1, okay? Marketing transformation, okay? Needing more information on that particular stage. We might set up another webinar for the future. We're bringing Josh Whitten, who's our partner of marketing transformation. He can talk about that in more depth than I can. And he's a real big expert at it. So if you ever wanted to drill down any more information on that, set up another webinar. You can do that. Talk about the next stage, which is stage 2. Okay. Now, typically, organizations have been through this, and what they realized is, unfortunately, right at the start of the webinar we talked about, is the customers have changed. Those pesky customers, okay? Typically, they're now wanting relevant information, experiences, omni-channel, multi-device, end-to-end, not just through the acquisition, but in usage, and also at the in support and everything else. They want to choose the way that they consume stuff and they interact with organizations, okay? Now, the downside for most analog organizations or established organizations, okay, is they've organized and structured, okay, to cater for a business as usual analog customer, okay, who probably don't think quite like that. So there's an actual tendency for organizations to what I call structure in a vertical, in a functional vertical way. So marketing, technology, whatever it is, okay? Customer, without being rude about it, doesn't give a stuff about the way you're organized. They want, that's my journey, and I don't want my experience to have what I call friction points, which are caused by processes handing over between all functional groups through an organization not working optimally, okay? Now, it's really easy to pick on the banks, okay? Because unfortunately, they generally don't do it very well. They're getting better at it, but they generally don't do it very well, okay? There's big changes to that because they clearly understand that customers are moving, but fundamentally, there are still, I'm not going to embarrass anybody who could be, might be listening or whatever, or in the market, but there are still not optimized customer experiences coming from banking unit, insurance company, whatever it is, okay? But there is clearly, when you get to this stage, a massive realization that things need to shift. The downside is, because your customers who pay all of our wages are shifting. Downside is they've got to reorganize all of their business, okay? From technology to organization to operational processes and bits and pieces like this, okay? So it is a full-on company-wide transformation. Now, the good news is there's an experience of change. There's an experience of the benefits which can do, and it gives a psychological boost to the organization when you've already gone through a change program, which has been successful for you, okay? But you have to start thinking about it like this, okay? And at the time, so you got, right, you know, you may have a chief marketing officer, chief strategy officer, whatever it is, sales officer in a B2B organization, got to move in this particular direction, okay? Tick in the box, we have to do it. You've probably also got people from your operational department going, do you know what, if we're going through this, then there's opportunities to digitize some of our operational processes. So fundamentally, I'm now also not only going to do the right thing for customers and continue that reach and revenue benefit curve going up, but I'm also going to get a benefit to do with my costs, okay? Because I'm going to deliver it more efficiently. I'm not going to be OpEx based, I'm going to be CapEx based, coming off the technology platform. You've then got your technology team, who is then broadly, and sorry, be really clear, your technology and your data team, who are then saying, we need to shift this, we need a fully integrated platform. You know, MarTech stack, we may need a transactional stack or a subscription stack, we need the right customer experience stack, maybe a chatbot or whatever it is, underpinned by, you know, adaptive technology to improve the relevancy and the personalization of that customer experience moving forward. That's going to be a shift as well. You've also then got organizational shift to be able to deal with that, okay? Probably from a skill base, your size, your shape, your communication, your culture, in the way that the organization needs to shift in that particular regard. So your chief talent officer, your HRD function, massively important. I mean, I've said before of this, I think many times, I've bored people with it many times. You know, you can tell technology to enable it is a difficult environment. You need a long-term technical architecture plan, and you need to get it worked out, okay? But the good thing is normally with technology, you can tell boxes what to do, and 999 times out of 1,000, they're going to do what they're told, okay? Humans are a very different beast, okay? We need to be enlivened, we need to be motivated, we need to go through this particular function. So we always say, when we're going through this, is this bit, let's work it out and see what the experience is. Let's work out what your operational processes are to actually be able to support it and continue it, and the ability to digitize it for cost benefit. Let's work out what we're going to do with the technical architecture plan. Let's work out what we need in the data lake to be able to do it. Let's work out new technologies which will give us that advantage on the next stage on, around AI, machine learning, and other bits and pieces like that. But the real investment is you've got to work on your organization. You've got to have that real clear business, let's call it business architectural type of approach. What are your talent going to be? How do we empower those guys? How do we ensure that everybody's clear on the change we're going through? In fact, we're working with a wealth tech business at the moment, a really super business, who are going through this process at the moment and working very closely actually with the HRD, because that is one of the core things. Clear vision, clear everything else. This is one of the core bits that we're working with. Can't stress enough that, you know, that is an area to really focus on. Too many people think, oh, it's all about technology. It is, but it's not the biggest bit. It's about us as humans and moving that forward. Okay.
Andrew, a question came in. I wondered, without sharing necessarily any of your clients, can you give us an example of a big company in stage 2?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's been a few actually who's there. So I'll just come to that question in a second, Claire. I just want to finalise off this slide, and then we've got an example coming up next. Okay. So if you do all that, what's the benefit? Okay, because it's going to be an investment. Okay, the benefit is you get more profitable. That's it. Okay. You know, there's a study done by Capgemini, I think a few years ago. Most digitally advanced companies, okay, are at least 27% more profitable than their nearest competitor. That's a compelling thing if you can achieve it. So, coming to that question. So, here's an example, okay? I can't tell you what it is, but it's a really, really big consumer internet security business, okay? So, they recently IPO'd last year. That's a fairly big hint. Okay, they have 4 product lines. What they were concerned about at this particular point in time was one of the product lines pre-IPO weren't performing well enough. So we took them through a customer experience, remember that word from the last slide, customer experience-led strategy change, which allowed them to turn it around, okay, the performance of it. So it completely bought into the market that this particular business division was servicing. It was a growth market, really, really interesting actually, but very competitive and everything like that. They were very concerned that actually they were going backwards in the market. So in a discrete business unit way, what they generally looked at here, okay, was how do we go about it? And we helped them actually through a customer experience-led change in a rapid turnaround process, okay, for that business line. And actually what that generally meant was changes all the way through those things we talked about. But we tied the customer experience-led change to the business model, okay, and that allowed us to prioritize the delivery of that benefit moving forward, or that change. But it did mean changes to organizational teams, whether the technology structure was around it, what operational processes they needed to do, how to enhance their marketing, and other bits and pieces like that. So that was an example of an organization of a size, in a size which went through that divisional change. Another organization which we've never worked with, but actually we're in awe of in many ways, who've gone through this, is ING Insurance and some of their big divisions. Check out some of their videos about the way that they move their organization from let's call it a change process, a waterfall-based organization to a self-regulating agile ecosystem. It's massively inspiring, okay? Really shows how they've done it, okay? So there's 2 examples of organizations which went about it, I think, in the right way and showed that it can be done if you plan it correctly and you work through what you need to do for the right reasons, invest in the right way, and go about delivering it in, being very clear how you're going to do it and when you're going to do it, and controlling that change moving forward. We helped the one I was talking about, this consumer internet security business, okay, do it utilizing our 9 change framework as well, and that helped them in that particular regard. But I'm not going to keep going on about that one. Future webinars will talk about that. Hopefully that explained that in that stage 2. So my personal favourite is stage 3. So you've done all the hard yards at stage 2. You've done all that. And fundamentally, what you've now got is all these things underneath here. Right? So you've done all the investment in previous stages, so you've got all the building blocks you need actually to be really creative and to do game-changing innovation in the marketplace. Okay? Check out a company called Klarna. Okay, they're a fintech business. They've got a really compelling customer experience-led, mixed in with big data and insight payment solution. Growing like a weed, came out of Sweden about 10 years ago. They're a real good example, I think, of game-changing industry innovation around the customer experience, but merged in with big data insights. Okay, I won't go any more onto that, but typically, if you've done the hard yards, you've got all your building blocks in place. You've got the building blocks and fuel, as I call it. So you've got your fuel and data in the inside. Okay, big data, this is its moment. Okay, yes, it's empowering all of your relevancy, your great customer experience in the previous stages, but this is all about changing the paradigm, changing the how you do things in your industry. Okay, and this will give you massive competitive advantage. Okay, as I say, previously you got all the building blocks, you got all your data and your insights sorted out. You've moved from that stage one, what I call muddy puddles of data, to clear data lakes, to an environment now where you can actually drive from data to information to knowledge to wisdom. Okay, you're driving that element to that. You've got all of your stack in place, your tech stack. You've got all of your right technical componentry in place, and that allows you to create quickly. You've got your environment sorted out. You've, as I said, you've got your technical platform. Your organisation's broadly cooking on gas. It's a self-regulated environment, probably in a planned agile approach. You've got those creative ways of working in place. So you're creating stuff really quickly, okay? You're coming up with the right things, you're choosing the right things, you're investing in the right things, and you're creating them quickly. And your competitors are going, oh my God, what the hell's going on here? They've just done a brilliant job, okay? You've also, really importantly, got all your go-to-market capabilities sorted out as well. So you can take these brilliant ideas to market, you can market test them. You understand that way of working. You're no longer doing massive business cases. You've done a reasonable business case, but to allow you to select the right stuff. But you're fundamentally using the market to test stuff. It's a completely different way of thinking about the way that you need to build stuff these days. That's the way it is. And as I say, you can become creative. You're not you've got everything else you need to transform. You be creative and really push the intellectual element out into your market in that particular regard. And that is stage 3, okay? And that gives you the competitive advantage in that particular regard. So what I'm hoping I've demonstrated is, you start off with something that you can do around marketing, it gives you a benefit. Then you have to do the big stuff, okay? But you've got momentum to be able to do it. But you do all that stuff, then you've got the bandwidth, or you've got all of the components you need to do this bit, which is where all of the benefit is. And what that generally does, if you're an established business, is it protects you from those disruptors, okay? Because entrepreneurs, and I've been that along the way, generally spot this stuff, and then they go, I'm just going to disrupt these fat and lazy companies who are hanging around, okay? But if you're not fat and lazy, then they go, oh, I'll move on to the next thing, all right? And then my challenge is to grow my company. Actually, if you've done the right stuff, you've got a massive advantage against any disruptor coming in at an early stage, because they won't have the reach, they won't have the benefit, they won't have these stuff. So hopefully that shows you those 3 stages of the digital evolution curve, okay? Now, some organisations, I've said it's 1, 2, 3. It doesn't have to be that. I mean, there was an early question that said, if you're at NOR and you're moving along and you've got the time, then I'd do 1, 2, 3. But occasionally in turnarounds, you can't do that, okay? And you have to maybe do 1, 3, 2, okay? Because you have to innovate yourself out of that environment. It's tougher because you haven't got that inbuilt bench strength gone through stage 2, but it is possible to do so depending on your circumstances. That said, as I said, it's a simple way of giving you a direction of travel in terms of what your transformation activity is going to be over a period of time. Really quickly, because we don't have much more time left. Good example of this, I can sort of cover this one. This is Ariba, which is a organisation, a telecoms business. out in the Middle East. They're brilliant. Okay, in fact, Richard, who is the other senior partner in the firm, he helped on their innovation program, launched their TV programming or their cross-border payment solutions and things like that, and added massive advantage to them as a business. Okay, so have a look at that case study. It's on our website. Actually, that's a really interesting one. So how useful is the innovation curve at each of these stages? So for turnaround, yes, all of them. Okay, just do it fast. Mix it around as well as you need to. Okay, transformation, do 1, 2, 3. Okay, it's really useful. Do it at your planned speed. Okay, the fastest that you as an organisation can achieve will be 9 to 5. Final one for innovation. Stage 2 is probably important because it allows you to go ticks and boxes. Stage 3 is obviously you're in that state. And the key thing at this particular point is down to you, actually, because you're in that lucky situation that you can move these elements along faster. So very fast. So once you've worked it out, direction of travel, okay, especially for your turnaround, but also for your transformation, you probably want to go to the blueprint stages. And typically, this is working out what you need to do. And us as an organisation, we're lucky. We have 30+ people in the organisation who are experts who have been through transformation, understand digital, been through transformation, and we've developed a number of blueprints along the way around strategy and business model processes, such as marketing approaches, organisational, yada, 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 yada. Okay, and that allows, again, more certainty as you go through your transformation element to it. Interesting slide. Again, where are your areas of your business? Where is the degree of change going to shift depending on what stage you go through? Here at stage 1, it's mostly about marketing, but it also is a bit about organisation, a bit about technology. Stage 2, it's less about your market, but it's a lot more about your operations, organisation, and enablement, albeit your market's moving to a customer experience-led change. And stage 3, your innovation, is all about your data model. Your informational model, I can't stress that enough. But that's just an interesting one just to give an impact in terms of where you can expect the degree of change within your organisation using the curve concept. Final one, just for those who know that we have an audience which is clearly go through innovation stuff. This is an innovation process that we broadly utilise, which just provides some control around your innovation. So obviously, we always start off, whenever we're doing anything, actually, is program planning it a little bit, just a little bit of control through the process. We're not up for massive, 3,000 line Gantt charts. Use things like Monday.com as an online Gantt chart environment, but always project plan it a little bit. Always use Insight. So I'm a massive proponent of always using Insight. Gather your ideas, ideate as much as you can. Go through a good process of evaluating and selecting the innovations. Don't throw them away. They might come back at a certain period of time, but select some because you'd normally come up with 100 ideas. But again, don't boil the ocean. Fundamentally, think about 10, depending on how much budget you've got to actually move it. And then work to scope it, develop a pilot, and push it out to market and measure it. As I said, minimal viable product. Ask your customers if this is a good solution for them. That is the difference today. Don't research it today, okay? And then go, ta-da, the market's moved on. It's broadly, do that 80-20 rule. Get enough insight in what you're doing, and then develop it, okay? Ask the market, measure it. Is it meeting what you do? Then be ruthless. If it's not doing it, kill it, okay? Use that VC type of, that venture capital type of model, which is, we're going to select 10 things. We think 2 or 3 are going to be successful. But if they are successful, we fundamentally know that it's going to be really good for us. It's a similar type of thing you do with your innovation processes today. But really think about it as well. Just an interesting process that we use, which works very well. We've done it with a number of companies. That leaves a little bit of Q&A time, if we have any left. We've got about 3 minutes. Okay. Any questions, Sophie?
Well, I think you've answered most of them. There was the question about the examples of companies that are at stage 2 and 3. I don't know, are there any more examples of non-digitally native people that are now at stage 3? That obviously we know all the Ubers and Amazons that are digitally native, but are there any others that you could hold up other than the one that you discussed?
Yeah, MasterCard is a really good company. Okay, it's a technology business, but fundamentally what they needed to go was a journey from, frankly, thinking themselves as a card enablement issuer to understanding that they're an IP payments network. Okay, and then layering on new innovations on top of that to allow consumers, not their channel, because they always used to be focused on banks and the issuers and all that type of thing, but end consumers, what was going to improve their payment experience? Okay, they're a really good example. They bought data insight businesses to fuel that, adding to, so they understand the buy cycle. I mean, they've always been relatively okay with that because obviously they've got unique access to our transactional data, but they've emboldened that, or enriched it is probably the right word, with market-related information and the way that they can articulate it and interrogate it along the way. So they're a really good company. They've transformed themselves from, I hate to say it, a relatively stodgy card issuer with a bit of membership, just a membership type of company. No, floated on the stock market. Share price have gone up tenfold over the last 4 or 5 years. They're a really super technology innovative business. And they do a lot of the stuff that we talked about at stage 3. They've built the building blocks. They facilitate these things out into the marketplace. Not perfect. They would be the first to admit that, you know, it's not working 100% right, but they are miles from where they were only 6 or 7 years ago. And that's down to a new CEO, Ajay Banga, that they had in their business, who's an extraordinary man, actually, a really inspiring individual who has transformed that business in that particular regard. Way ahead of Visa. I mean, Visa's bigger just because of historical reason, but trust me, Visa worry about MasterCard a lot more than the other way around.
We've just had another question also come through, and the question is, there seems to be a lot of conversation about AI at the moment. At what stage do you consider AI?
Ooh, that's a good question. AI is a way to interrogate and learn from your data environment. So you could use AI to improve your marketing experience at stage 1. It might be too early for that, okay, because you might not be what I would call mature enough in the way that you're thinking about your data, but also the way you're utilizing it and your enablement of it. Because AI is a magical thing. You have to program it to go and learn stuff rather than do stuff for you. So you've got to be clear around what it can do for you. I think the proper time for me, really, because this is not only an evolution of your business, but it's an evolution of the understanding of what it can do for you in your organization. Probably injecting it at stage 2, actually, because at that point you are fueling, I think, a fundamental shift to your customer experience. And it's a fundamental building block for what you can do for innovation. All that said, if you're if an organization does have some really good people in the organization that understands that and actually wants to take a discrete project and improve the marketing, well, why not have a go at it at stage 1 as well? But for me, I think for most organizations, it's probably a stage 2 type, or stage 2 plus type of activity.
Great, thanks for that. We've just got another question that's just come in. From your experience, how long does it take on average to move from one stage to another?
My experience, yeah, it is. Do you know what? It varies completely, okay? And it varies on a few factors, okay? I think the first one is actually how fast the flame is under your feet, okay? So if you're turning around, then the move from 1 to 2 to 3 can be, or needs to be, really quick, okay? So we helped an insurance-based business who was ironically a disruptor about 12 years ago, and had taken an eye off the market and what they needed to do a little bit. And we still going through it actually. We're taking them through a turnaround process, which is probably going to take 12 months to get through 1, 2, 3. Okay, and they need to do it really fast. But they're a relatively small organisation. So I think the timing is predicated by how fast you can do it, but also secondly, how complex the organisation is, right? So if you're another client in the past, a very large multinational organisation with 50 brands and also have got operating in 50 markets, then clearly your job of change is going to be more complex to get through the stages, okay, than an organisation like the one I've just described, which is an organisation of 40 or 50 people, okay. How long generally does it take? Let's take a medium-sized organisation, that hospitality business. Generally, if you do, I think personally, if you know what you're doing and you move quickly and you can move quickly enough, the marketing stage can be done in a year. I think the stage 2 is generally going to be a bit longer, okay, but you may have momentum, so let's just assume as well that's going to take another 18 months. All right, so you're broadly looking at 2.5 years for a mid-sized business. Forgive me, that's my cat in the background. A mid-sized business of moving in that particular regard. I think if you're a really complicated business, then we're probably looking at 5 years. If you're looking at a small business, I personally think with your micro business, you can broadly do that in weeks. But if you're looking at a smaller business up to 50 million turnover, say, then you should be able to turn stuff around within a year, or even faster. I mean, most private equity companies are asking us increasingly, but also as part of their tasks, to turn around businesses by injecting the right things and doing it in the right way as fast as possible, because they're clearly cognitive that the market's shifting. And you can do it, you can speed it up, but as I say, as a rule of thumb, if I was put on the spot, as I was yesterday by a CEO in this wealth tech business, which is a much bigger organisation, it's 500 people, generally that process, I think for them, is going to take about 2.5 years.
That's great, thank you, Andrew. I think we're probably at the end of the webinar now, but all I would say is if anyone's got any further questions they want to send on to us, then please do send them to me. It's sophie.fraser@digitalworksgroup.com.